Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, and this is the story of how a single balloon, a broken speaker, and a crooked picture frame changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. It started with a text that wasn't meant for me. 3 words. He won't come. No name, no context, just that. I was at work, restocking the supply closet when my phone lit up with the message. Sent from Marlene, my wife. I stared at the screen like it would rewrite itself. The message was clearly meant for someone else. But I didn't say anything. I just felt something sharp twist inside my chest. I ignored it because that's what I do. I explain things away until there's nothing left to explain. That evening, she asked if I could come late to Ivy's birthday party. She said they were setting up something special. I asked if she needed help. She laughed and told me to just wear something nice. Her tone had that airy, distracted quality, like she was only half listening. I should have paid attention. At 7:41 p.m., I pulled up to Ivy's house. But the driveway was full, the street jammed with cars. I parked 2 blocks away, walking in the dark with a lopsided party bag and a half-inflated balloon that kept smacking me in the face. I remember thinking, this better be worth it. I was halfway to the door when I saw it. Through the living room window, just a glimpse. Red dress. Hand on his chest. His face tilted toward hers. Her face turned upward. My wife. My mechanic. Laughing. The door swung open just as I reached the porch. Curtis, someone blurted. Then, lights, shouting. Surprise. I stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the balloon string like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Cheers filled the room. Confetti popped. And there she was, in the center, red dress, red cheeks, red hands. Her lips still wet. His hand still on her waist. People turned. Laughter faded. My name echoed again. Curtis? But Marlene didn't move. She stared at me like she'd seen a ghost crawl out of the floorboards. And the man next to her, Roman, had the audacity to smirk. Not big, just enough to say, I know. I wanted to speak, but the words sat behind my teeth like broken glass. I took 1 step forward, and the balloon slipped from my hand, floated upward, and got caught in the spinning ceiling fan. The whole room watched it tangle. Watched it burst. No one said a word. And that's how the party began. I didn't move for what felt like a full minute. I just stood there as pieces of the popped balloon floated slowly to the floor like some cruel metaphor. Marlene was still in the same pose, hand near Roman's chest, her mouth slightly open, like she hadn't decided what expression to wear yet. I could hear someone awkwardly clearing their throat in the back, someone else whispering, "Isn't that her husband?" No one laughed. No one offered me a drink. Ivy shuffled toward me with a forced smile, trying to salvage the evening. Curtis, we didn't think you were coming this early, she said, her voice a pitch higher than usual. I turned to look at her, but said nothing. I couldn't. My tongue was heavy, like it knew that if I spoke now, something inside me would split open for good. Roman had the audacity to nod at me, like we were meeting at a barbecue. Hey man, he muttered, as if we were old friends. My fists clenched automatically, not because I was going to swing. I'm not the type, but because I needed to hold on to something, even if it was just my own trembling. Marlene finally stepped away from him, brushing her hair behind her ear in that nervous tick I used to find adorable. Curtis, this isn't what it looks like, she said, and I almost laughed. Almost. Because it looked exactly like what it looked like. The room was still full of people, half of them pretending to look at their phones, the other half frozen like extras in a bad stage play. I thought this was Ivy's birthday, I said finally, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. Marlene looked like she had a rehearsed answer, but it slipped away when she noticed I wasn't blinking. It is. It was, we were going to surprise you after, too. So the surprise was a makeout session before the cake? I asked. That one landed. Someone near the chip table let out a tiny gasp. Ivy stepped forward again, trying to take the blame. It was a joke, she offered weakly. They were just being silly. With their tongues? I asked, my voice sharper now. That's some high-level party humor. Marlene grabbed my arm like she still had the right to touch me. Please, Curtis, let's go talk outside. I shook her off. My legs were shaking, my ears were burning, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of hiding the mess she made. No, I said. Let's all talk right here, since everyone's already seen the show. She looked wounded, like I was embarrassing her. Roman, still standing there with his drink, had the nerve to say, Look, man, we didn't mean for you to find out this way. And that's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was something that had been happening, and the only variable they hadn't accounted for was me showing up early. I looked around at the guests, our friends, co-workers, neighbors, and I wondered how many of them knew. How many smiled at me in grocery stores, waved when we walked our cats around the block, while knowing what my wife was doing behind my back. My chest felt hollow. Not burning with rage like you'd think, but cold, like something important had been scooped out without me noticing. "Enjoy the party," I muttered, and turned to leave. Marlene called my name once, twice, but I didn't stop. Not even when she chased me to the door barefoot, begging me to wait. And still, I left. Not with dignity. Not with closure. Just a hollow man walking down a quiet street, listening to his own heartbeat as the party music faded behind him. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even know where I was going when I walked away from the house. I just kept moving, past the line of parked cars, past someone's poorly tied balloon drifting along the sidewalk, until I found myself sitting on a metal bench outside a closed bakery. It was one of those benches with chipped green paint and a brass plaque that read, "In memory of Harold and Betty." I sat there for over an hour, clutching my phone but not calling anyone. I didn't have anyone to call. My parents were both gone. My brother and I hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since he took Marlene's side during some stupid argument about Thanksgiving. Most of my friends had quietly evaporated after our wedding. Or maybe I had. I always thought I was the boring one, the dependable, steady guy people only called when they needed help moving. Turns out, I wasn't even that anymore. Eventually, I got up and booked a cheap motel room on my phone. 20 minutes later, I was standing in a room that smelled like mildew and lemon disinfectant, staring at a floral bedspread that hadn't been updated since the late 90s. I dropped onto the bed, still in the same clothes I wore to the party, and stared at the ceiling for what must have been hours. Everything felt unreal. The image of her on Roman's lap kept looping in my mind like a bad commercial. Her face, that red dress, the stunned look when she saw me, followed by that awful phrase, "You weren't supposed to be here yet." That was what haunted me most. Not the kiss, not the betrayal, but the implication that my absence was expected, that they had planned this, assuming I'd be too slow, too trusting, too oblivious to show up in time. And they were almost right. At 3:17 a.m., I got a message from her. Just one sentence. "Can we talk in the morning?" I didn't reply. What was there to say? What version of the story would she try to feed me? That it didn't mean anything? That it was a mistake? That she was drunk? Roman didn't look drunk, and her body language didn't scream accident. No, it screamed comfort. Familiarity. Like she'd been there before. I tried to piece together the past few months. The nights she came home late, claiming she'd been helping Ivy with her startup. The business trips that suddenly doubled. The lingerie I found in her suitcase that didn't look like anything she wore around me. The pieces were all there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Somewhere around dawn, I finally fell asleep, fully dressed, shoes and all. I dreamt that I was back in that party room, but this time no one looked at me. I screamed, I shouted, but everyone laughed and danced while Marlene kissed Roman under a disco ball shaped like a heart. When I woke up, my pillow was damp. I told myself it was from sweat, but I knew it wasn't. I checked my phone again. 2 missed calls. For more texts. One from Ivy, trying to do damage control. "Please don't make this worse than it is." It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I almost threw the phone across the room, but I didn't. I needed it. It was the only thing still connecting me to a life that was falling apart in real time. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened the Note app and started typing everything I remembered. Every detail, every lie, every quiet moment that now felt like it had hidden something louder beneath it. Because deep down, I knew I'd never look at Marlene the same way again. And the worst part? I still wasn't angry. I was just embarrassed. Like I'd been the last one to get the joke. By the time the sun dragged itself into the sky, I still hadn't decided what to do. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't showered. I just kept replaying the moment at the party on a loop, dissecting every angle, every expression, every flicker of guilt or lack thereof in her eyes. At 9:12 a.m., she texted again, "I'm coming to the motel." That jolted me. I didn't tell her where I was. How did she even know? I peeked out the curtain and, sure enough, 10 minutes later her silver hatchback pulled into the lot like it was any other day. She parked, stepped out, still in that red dress, now wrinkled and thrown over with a denim jacket. She looked tired, but not devastated. I was hoping for devastated. I wanted her to fall apart, to look as broken as I felt. But no. She had that same look she always wore when explaining to customer service why her coupon should still work. Confident, annoyed, ready to twist logic into apology. I didn't open the door until she knocked twice. "Curtis," she said, her voice soft, like we were about to have a gentle disagreement about laundry. I opened the door and stepped back without a word. She came in, sat on the edge of the bed like it belonged to her, and exhaled dramatically. "I didn't want it to happen like this," she began, and my skin crawled. That line. It's always the same line, isn't it? No matter the story, no matter the betrayal. As if there's ever a right way for your spouse to be found wrapped around another person. I didn't respond. She took that as permission to continue. "It started a few months ago," she admitted, and I swear the room actually tilted for a second. "Roman was helping me with my car, and we got to talking. I didn't plan for it to turn into anything. It just had happened." She paused like that was supposed to be enough. Like her saying the words aloud somehow cleared the air. I laughed, bitter and dry. "You didn't plan it, but you wore that dress. You kissed him in front of 20 people. You lied for weeks, and you let me show up thinking it was Ivy's party. What did you plan exactly?" That hit her. Her jaw tightened. "You never made time for me anymore, Curtis. You're always tired. You never notice me." I held up a hand. Don't finish that sentence unless you want to hear how many nights I cooked for you, waited up for you, reminded you I loved you even when you barely looked away from your phone." There was a long silence. She looked at the floor. "I didn't mean to fall out of love with you," she said finally. "That was the worst part. Not the cheating. Not even the public humiliation. But that. The casual way she dismantled what I thought we had. Like it was a flat tire she forgot to fix." I asked her the question I had been dreading to ask all night. Was it just Roman? She hesitated. That second of silence told me everything I needed to know. My legs nearly gave out. I sat down, slowly, on the farthest edge of the bed. "So who else?" I asked, not because I wanted to know, but because the truth is like an infection. You either clean it out completely, or it rots you from the inside. She wouldn't give me names. It didn't mean anything, she kept repeating. None of them did. That's when it became clear. She wasn't sorry for doing it. She was sorry for getting caught. Sorry that I saw. That other people saw. I stood up, walked to the small table by the window, and picked up the motel pen. "You know what's funny?" I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I once wrote you a poem here. This exact motel. For our second anniversary. We couldn't afford a real trip, so we stayed here and ate vending machine snacks. You cried when I read it." She looked away, cheeks red. "Curtis, I stopped her. "Just leave. Please." She stood up slowly, walked to the door, and paused. "Can we talk later?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just watched the door swing shut behind her. And then, in that cheap, ugly motel room, I cried like a man who finally realized the person he loved never loved him the same way back. I don't remember how long I sat there after she left. Hours blurred together, sunlight crawling across the stained carpet like it had somewhere better to be. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from her, from Ivy, even from Roman, believe it or not. One message from him just said, "It's not as bad as it looks." That line almost made me laugh out loud. Not as bad. He'd been holding my wife like she was his reward for good behavior, and I was supposed to believe it wasn't as bad? I threw my phone into the empty ice bucket and sat in silence, wishing I could throw my heart in there too and freeze it solid. I wanted to stop feeling. That would have been easier. But no, my brain insisted on playing reruns of every sweet moment we ever had, tainted now by what I knew. I remembered how Marlene used to tuck a note into my lunch bag with a little smiley face drawn next to, "Have a great day." And I realized she probably sent Roman a selfie while I was eating that sandwich. That realization hit harder than I expected. By early afternoon, I couldn't take the suffocating motel air anymore. I left without packing up. I didn't care. I didn't want to go home, either. Everything inside our house suddenly felt contaminated. I couldn't imagine opening our front door and seeing our couch, the couch where we binge-watched bad crime shows, without picturing her texting one of her affairs during commercial breaks. I drove aimlessly, my hands on the wheel, but my head nowhere near the road. I ended up at the park where we took our engagement photos. There was a bench near the duck pond where she had once told me, I don't ever want to hurt you." I laughed at the memory, bitter and loud enough that an old man walking his dog gave me a weird look. I didn't care. Let him stare. Let the ducks judge me too while they were at it. Eventually, I pulled out my phone again, not to answer her messages, but to open an old photo album. The first photo that popped up was from our 3rd anniversary. Her in that yellow sundress, smiling with her whole face, like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. I had been so proud of that photo. I made it my lock screen for over a year. Now it just looked fake, like I was looking at a stranger who happened to wear my wife's skin. I couldn't tell which version of her was real, the one in the photo or the one wrapped around Roman's neck. Maybe both were real. Maybe that was the cruel part. As evening crept in, I finally checked one of her messages. It was a long one. A paragraph that read like it had been written, edited, and rewritten multiple times. She said she wanted to come clean, that there was more to explain, and that she owed me the truth. I didn't even finish reading it. I knew what was coming. She was going to try to redefine what we had, reframe it so her betrayal sounded like some kind of awakening or self-discovery, or worse, my fault. I turned off my phone completely, stuck it in the glove compartment, and drove to the only place I could think of that felt untouched by her, my childhood home. It had been empty since my dad passed away, but the key still worked. I stepped inside and was greeted by that familiar mix of dust and memories. The air was stale, the wallpaper was peeling in places, but at least nothing in there had lied to me. I curled up on the old recliner in the living room, the one my dad used to fall asleep in with a toothpick still in his mouth, and for the first time in 2 days, I let myself feel something other than shame. I felt loss. Deep, aching, irreversible loss. Not just of her, but of the life I thought I was living. I woke up in that recliner the next morning with a crick in my neck and the crushing weight of reality still pressing on my chest. For a moment, in that half-asleep haze, I forgot everything. The betrayal, the party, Roman's smug face, Marlene's red dress. It was all gone, and I was just a man waking up in his childhood home, where nothing bad had ever happened. But the second I blinked the sleep away and saw the half-lit room around me, it all came rushing back like a flood with no mercy. My stomach churned, empty but nauseous. I couldn't bring myself to eat. I just paced. Each creak of the floorboards felt like a reminder of how unstable everything was now. I kept expecting a message from her to show up on my phone, but I'd left it turned off. I needed space. I needed silence. But my mind wasn't silent. It was screaming, looping every word she said, every look she gave me that night, every moment I'd blindly ignored before it all cracked open. Around noon, I heard a car outside. My chest tightened instantly, and I peeked through the curtain like a child avoiding visitors. It was her. She was standing next to her car, clutching a small paper bag and a thermos like she was delivering a peace offering to a wild animal. I didn't move. I didn't go out. She knocked. Once. Twice. Called my name. I stayed still. My pulse was a metronome of panic. She sat on the front step like she belonged there, like she had every right to come into this sacred place and sprinkle her guilt all over it. I could hear her voice muffled through the door, saying things I didn't want to hear. Things like, "I still care about you," and "I never meant for it to go so far." Then came the worst one. "You were always too good to me, Curtis." Too good. That line felt like a slap wrapped in a compliment. Like being told, "You were so kind. I thought you'd never notice I was slowly destroying you." Eventually, she left the bag on the doorstep and drove off, slowly, as if hoping I'd chase her. I didn't. I waited another hour before opening the door. Inside the bag was a sandwich, my favorite from that cafe downtown, and a folded napkin with my name written on it in her handwriting, the same way she used to label my lunch when we first started dating. The thermos was filled with coffee, just how I liked it. And for a terrifying moment, I almost cried. Not because of the gesture, but because a part of me still wanted to believe it meant something. That she felt sorry. That maybe the woman I loved was still buried under all the lies. But that hope, that flicker of desperate loyalty, was like reaching for a lifeboat that's already sinking. I threw the sandwich in the trash. I poured the coffee down the sink. I didn't want crumbs of affection. I wanted the whole thing, the truth, the loyalty, the commitment. And she had thrown it away for some excitement with a man who changes brake pads for a living. I walked into my father's old study and sat in his creaky leather chair, surrounded by dusty books and yellowing photographs. On the desk was a picture of him and my mom, smiling like idiots during a picnic. They weren't perfect, but they respected each other. That mattered. That used to matter. And now I was alone, wrecked, staring at relics from a time when love didn't come with disclaimers. Later that night, I finally turned my phone back on. 92 messages, 9 missed calls, 3 voicemails, all from her, 1 from Roman, and, oddly enough, 1 from Ivy. Her message was short. Call me. You need to know what she's not telling you. My stomach twisted again, as if the wound wasn't deep enough. Now someone was handing me a shovel. I didn't call Ivy back. Not yet. I just sat there, phone in hand, screen glowing like it had answers. Because suddenly, the idea that there was more, that the betrayal I knew might only be the surface, was somehow worse than everything I'd already endured. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the texts or the unanswered questions Ivy dangled in front of me like bait, but because my own brain wouldn't let me. It kept circling back to every second of the past year, picking apart conversations, looking for cracks I never noticed. I kept wondering how many times I'd kissed her goodnight while she was still wearing his cologne. That thought alone made me sick to my stomach. Around 3 a.m., I gave in. I called Ivy. My hand shook the entire time the phone rang, because part of me still hoped she wouldn't answer. But she did. Not with a hello, but a quiet, serious Curtis? Like she'd been waiting for this call all along. I didn't know what to say, so I just asked, what is it that she didn't tell me? There was silence, the kind that buzzes in your ear before something awful hits. And then she said it, calmly, clearly, like she was reading it off a cue card. Curtis, Marlene didn't just cheat with Roman. She used you. I asked her to explain. Ivy hesitated, then finally said, Marlene didn't want to marry you. Not really. Back then, she was trying to get out of her parents' house. You were the stable, easy answer. She told me that once. That she knew you'd never leave, and that you'd always pay the bills on time. You were safe. My heart didn't just break. It cracked wide open, and the pieces weren't even sharp anymore. They were dull, rounded, hollow. I asked, in a voice that didn't sound like mine, she said that to you? Ivy sighed. More than once. But I didn't think it was my place to say anything. I thought maybe she'd come around. I thought maybe you were happy. Happy. That word felt poisonous. I wanted to scream at Ivy, to ask her why she didn't tell me, to rage about being kept in the dark like some backup plan who got upgraded out of convenience. But the truth was, I wasn't angry at Ivy. I was angry at myself. For never asking why I was always the one trying harder. For never noticing how her smiles faded the second I turned around. For thinking loyalty could somehow replace love. The next morning, I drove back to our house. I didn't tell her I was coming. I didn't knock. I used my key for what I hoped would be the last time. The house felt wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. Like someone had tried to erase the damage, wipe it all down, pretend it never happened. She was in the kitchen, barefoot, still in the same robe she used to wear when making pancakes on Sundays. She froze when she saw me. Curtis, she whispered, as if my name had become fragile. I didn't speak. I walked past her, into the bedroom, and started packing. Just my stuff. I didn't want anything we shared. No joint photos, no dishes we picked together, not even the bed. She followed me, asking questions I ignored. Where are you going? Can we talk? You can't just leave. But I could, and I was. I only stopped once. As I zipped up the last duffel bag, I turned to her and said, I know you married me because I was safe. But here's the thing. Safety is earned. It's not something you get to use like a doormat. And you burned it to the ground. She cried, of course. Claimed it wasn't true, that Ivy misunderstood. She begged me to give her a chance to prove she still loved me. But all I could think about was how many lies she'd delivered with that same cracked voice and glassy eyes. I walked out without another word, got in my car, and didn't look back. Not even once. The moment I turned off our street, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not peace. Not yet, but something close. Maybe the first breath of air in a room I hadn't realized I was suffocating in for years. It's strange how life doesn't fall apart all at once. It unravels slowly, thread by thread, and you only notice when you're suddenly standing there with nothing left to hold. But what's even stranger, what caught me completely off guard, is that once it's all gone, once everything you thought you needed is ripped away, there's space. Space for something new. The first few days after I left Marlene were brutal. I lived out of my car at first, then on a friend's couch, the kind of friend I hadn't spoken to in years, but who opened the door like I'd never left. I spent a lot of time walking, thinking, replaying everything in my mind. The betrayal, the lies, the quiet moments I once thought were love, but now realized were just silence filling a hollow space. But somewhere in that mess, something unexpected happened. I started feeling lighter. Not healed. Not yet. But lighter. Like I wasn't dragging her mistakes around anymore. Like I wasn't apologizing for being the kind of man who wanted simple, honest things. 3 weeks after I left, I enrolled in a photography class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the nerve to try. The first day, I almost didn't go. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, thinking maybe I should just drive away. But I went in, and I'm glad I did. There was a woman there named Nadine. Quiet, a little awkward, but with the kindest eyes I've ever seen. We talked about shutter speeds and lighting, and for the first time in a long while, I laughed without faking it. We haven't gone on a date yet, and maybe we never will, but that's not the point. The point is, life didn't end when Marlene betrayed me. It began again, and this time, I'm not living it for someone else. I don't regret walking away. Not anymore. What I regret is how long I stayed, how long I pretended that comfort was the same thing as love. If you're watching this, and you've been the quiet one in the relationship, the one who gives more than they get, let me say this. You deserve more than crumbs. You deserve someone who chooses you with both hands, not just when it's convenient. As for me, I'm still figuring things out. I've got a tiny apartment now with mismatched furniture and a view of a brick wall. But every time I look around, I smile. Because none of it is built on lies. And somehow, that makes it feel like a palace. Thanks for staying with me through this story. I know it was messy and painful, but if it reminded you of anything from your own life or from history, drop it in the comments. Maybe it was a moment of betrayal, or maybe a moment when you took your life back. Either way, I'd love to hear it. You're watching Reddit Confessions, and trust me, sometimes the best confessions are the ones that set you free.